What is this monstrosity, this hot glue mess? Oh my Lord. So it's an early experiment. Oh gosh, maybe 5 or 6 years now since I made these. And this is definitely a prototype, and my hot gluing skills haven't improved over time. The whole premise is that, and at one point these were scattered throughout the house, that these guys sit here and they, when they detect a human being, they just check the light level. So inside on the actual board itself, no expense spared on the container. On the board itself is a little light dependent resistor. Let's see if I can just zoom in on that without the spaghetti. I'll get back to you on that one. That's better. So yeah, obviously a prototype done on one of these generic PCBs and lots of wires going everywhere. But at its heart, you've got the A-Tiny13. In fact, I think this may not be the original prototype. I think I actually used an A-Tiny85 to start with. Yeah, A-Tiny13, light-dependent resistor, and then you've got a couple. You can just see one there, which would be probably... It's probably the resistor that goes to the base of the NPN, but there's also a couple of resistors in there. I mean, one, for instance, needs to form a voltage divider with the LDR. And then, so what happens is that the PIR, which you can see here, and these things actually don't consume an awful lot of energy. So it just sits there, it detects something warm going past, and then is it nighttime? Yes, it is, and so therefore it brings up the, I think there's PWM involved, so it just brings up the string of LEDs, and those LEDs are 12-volt LEDs running from a 9-volt battery. So yeah, pretty early days for me in terms of design, having two separate power supplies, and so that's why I've dragged this out, so that we can have a look. And there's an insect on the top, so that we can have a look at maybe redesigning or redeploying these. I don't think you need the bright 12-volt LEDs. I found that at night time, actually, they're a little overwhelming. So, in fact, I'm thinking that maybe we should be looking at something like a couple of, normal warm white LEDs should be enough, which means we can run it off the same supply, and probably looking maybe at something like, instead of 2 AA alkaline batteries, maybe something like 3 AA or 3 AAA nickel metal hydride, for so they can be recharged, and that's going to be obviously a little bit more sustainable. So so let's actually see this in action first. So what I'll do is I'll just raise this up a little bit. There we go, and do a little bit of refocus. There we go. I'll just get the PIR pointing in the right direction. I think it's all live at the moment. And then I'll have to turn off the lights, obviously. Yeah, that's not too bad. All right, so turn off the lights. And then hopefully, there we go. So there's your PIR coming up. And I think it stays up for, around 90 seconds or so. So that's pretty much what it looks like to the naked eye. It's pretty bright, actually. A little OTT for what its purpose is. And yeah, there it goes, and it's just fading again. So yeah, whoa, bit of a flare out. Sorry about that, should have warned you. Now one of the incarnations of this thing was that once I got it going and I was pretty happy with it, is that I just made my own PCB. Let me just get that one in there. So that's this guy. I think we'll have to focus down on that as well. I think this would have been one of the first, what I would call, successful PCBs that I actually designed based on that circuit. So we've got our SMD13, A-Tiny13 sitting over the top there with the little dot indicating pin 1. And then we've got, our SS8050, which is still one of my favourite NPN transistors. And there's the spot for the LDR. There's our 3 outputs for the PIR, not very well labelled. And I do remember getting this wrong a couple of times and getting into a sort of a rhythm of building a few of them so that I could tell which is which. And same here too with this one. I think from memory the square I made ground. I think that's how I told it apart. Then we've got the output to the LED strip. We've got our input from our 9-volt battery, and this over here is our input from our AA battery. We've got a 220k resistor. I'm assuming that's to the base here. You can see it there going to the base of the NPN and coming out of what looks like to be PB0. We've got our detection here on PB2, and then we've got a 10k resistor here. I'm assuming that one of the 10k resistors would be pulled down to ground to make sure that this is triggered by the pin and not just someone just floating past some transients. So that's pulled down to ground, and I'm thinking that this 10k resistor is probably in the voltage divider with this LDR. So yeah, handy little guy. Nothing on the back there of any note, but worked pretty well. And I've got a few of these, and I'm just wondering whether or not it's maybe worth repurposing them. So there's nothing really wrong with the basic idea except for the 2 power supplies. So we can link those, and instead of strip, maybe if we could have one LED coming out and in parallel another LED coming out, we might be able to come up with something which is a little more compact, and maybe ultimately actually we could pair it with the old QX5252 because that can run with the stable dual thief, which I'll link up here. So that project's, it's not finished. It's still very much alive. I haven't used it for a while, but we could use it to actually do the power supply to the A-Tiny. And I'm not sure if it would have enough grunt to have the LEDs, but you never know. We could do that as well. So a combination of early PCBs for this project. You've got 5 volts coming into the breadboard. There's an A-Tiny 13 running at 128 kilohertz, so just plodding along really. And I've kept the same configuration for all the pins because ultimately I think I want to repurpose this board here. But it's a single power supply, and we've got the voltage divider with a 10k resistor here and the LDR here. I took the the PIR out of the old monstrosity, so it's plugged into PB2 here, and it's also on the 5-volt power supply. Coming out of PB0 is a 1k resistor to base and a 10k resistor pulling down to ground. And then we've got the emitter going to ground. And on the collector side, I was thinking about this guy. So these are either 1 or 3, what I can't remember really. And I've just got them paralleled coming out of each negative side here is a 220 ohm resistor. So on the collector side, that should be plugged into 5 volts, same power supply. And well, that was exciting. Let me just get this right. So plugged into, there we go. And let's plug that into here. Yeah, I might have to go a little bit further. There we go. Put it on this side. Nice. All right, so what we need to do now is to turn off the lights and probably even cover up the LDR. And yeah, so it comes up pretty quick. Should hold it for about 30 seconds or so, and then out a bit slower. And the idea is that it's in a hallway or a room or something like that. It gives you enough time to get in there and do what you need to do. You can always, affect the timing either in the code or maybe have a separate potentiometer or something. But and there you can see it fading out. That's pretty much doing what it needs to do. So very slow to fade out to give you plenty of time. And because it's 128 kilohertz, it's going to pulse a little bit at the end, which is fine. Yep, nice, very dramatic. Can we, oh, need to hold the LDR. And she's going to give us round 2. Yep, there she goes. Good-o. All right, so now let's bring this guy back into play and see if we can't... oh, that's pretty bright. Let's just wind that down a bit. Apologies. And see if we can't repurpose this guy with a single power supply, this configuration, and it should be good. Here's the project in a box now. So we've got the PIR at the top, which means from whatever direction that the person approaches, the angle should be able to pick that up. Got our little LDR there, monitoring light levels, and down below here, a couple of LEDs, which are sort of hidden until they're triggered. So speaking of triggering, if we douse the lights and wave our hands, there we go. Oh, that's a bit dark. Let me just, yeah, so that's more like what I'm seeing now. So it just comes up fairly quickly actually, and holds it for 30 seconds. You can change that in the code. I guess you could, ultimately add probably, well, a couple of things, a little potentiometer for how long it stays up, and also a little potentiometer for when it's triggered. But I use these in the absolute dark, so I'm happy to have it a little bit set so that it's darker than lighter. It is going into a dark hallway, but there's a little bit of light around the place. There's some mad PWM happening. Let me just put the lights back up again so it doesn't re-trigger. And that is, whoa, sorry about that. There we go. That is the circuit working for this week. We'll see you next time.